Welcome to another deep dive, and today we're going somewhere really fascinating.
Yeah, someplace pretty unique.
We're cracking open a text called the Shri Matrika Bheda Tantra.
Sounds familiar.
First published in English back in 1989.
Right, but the original... Go ahead.
But the original Sanskrit could be way older, like we're talking maybe even the 4th century A.D.
Possibly. And get this, it even references older traditions.
Wow, so we are really talking ancient wisdom.
Yeah.
So what kind of journey are we taking our listener on in this deep dive?
Well, get ready, because we're exploring all those core beliefs and practices described in the Shri Matrika Bheda Tantra.
Okay.
Think rituals,
Okay.
the significance of the guru, harnessing the power of mantras, and even alchemy.
Wait, stop right there. Alchemy. That's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
So we're talking mercury-sulfur compositions, not just for like healing or boosting vitality,
Right.
but it even hints at, turning base metals into gold.
Hold on. Alchemy in ancient India. That's not something you hear every day. So what should they be prepared to encounter as we kind of like delve deeper into this text?
Well, you'll find some really detailed descriptions of rituals and practices. Some might even seem a little unusual to us today.
Sure.
But the key here is understanding them within their historical and cultural context.
Okay, that's an excellent point. All right, so let's just jump right into the Shri Matrika Bheda Tantra and let's see what we can find.
Sounds good. Let's do it.
So I noticed right off the bat that the text mentions the importance of the guru.
Right.
And in fact, it even calls out that the 7th chapter is very badly corrupted.
Yeah, and it actually goes on to point out, discrepancies in the dating, even mentioning other tantras like the Todala Tantra and the Vamakeshvara Tantra, which seem to be from a much later period.
So it's like the text itself is kind of acknowledging that it's been interpreted and compiled, over time. It's not just like a straightforward manual.
Absolutely, yeah. There are layers to unpack. And the text, it doesn't shy away from, detailed descriptions of rituals. Like, take the 2nd chapter.
Okay, what's in the 2nd chapter?
It outlines how to create a linga for worship.
Okay.
But it's not just any linga. The text is very specific about the materials to use.
Wow.
The mantras to recite during the process. It's really interesting.
Like a recipe.
Yeah.
With like physical ingredients, but then also spiritual ingredients.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And then there's, the alchemy.
Oh, right. Yeah.
We talked about.
That we were just talking about.
Yeah.
Using mercury and sulfur for healing and enhancing vitality, but also transforming base metals into gold.
Now, think about the parallels there. It's not just about transforming, like, physical substances, right?
Yeah.
The text is implying that we can transform ourselves, too, our thoughts, our desires, even our limitations.
So, inner alchemy, turning our own kind of base metals into spiritual gold. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
Oh, wow.
And it offers clues on how to actually do that, through things like mantra recitation or working with Kundalini energy.
Okay, speaking of Kundalini, the text actually links that to sexual practices and spiritual awakening.
Yeah, it does.
In fact, it states that Kundalini enjoyment is achieved through enjoyment and worship via liberation.
It's a pretty bold statement. It challenges us to kind of consider that interconnectedness of the physical and the spiritual realms.
Yeah.
And, how they can work together on the path to liberation.
But how do we actually work with Kundalini energy? What does the text tell us about that?
Well, it gets into the chakras, which are the energy centers within the body. And like many tantric traditions, it doesn't shy away from, acknowledging the power of sexual energy as a force for spiritual awakening.
Okay, now that's a perspective that definitely, challenges conventional views on sexuality and spirituality. So it seems like the Shri Matrika Bheda Tantra has a lot to say about harnessing energy, both internal and external.
Absolutely.
And it seems like mantras play a pretty big role in that.
You're right. Mantras are kind of woven throughout the text.
Yeah.
And they're used for purification, for healing, for achieving spiritual goals.
Can you give us an example of how the Shri Matrika Bheda Tantra instructs us to use mantras?
Yeah. There's one passage that says, by one effort, one should gather together 2 tolas of bijas, 80 tola of milk from 108 cows. Very carefully, one should collect krim, klam, klim 108 times. Very carefully, one should the mantra 108 times.
Wow, that's incredibly specific.
It is.
The precision and repetition are striking.
Yeah, it really highlights the importance of that meticulous practice and the belief that those specific sounds hold a very potent power to transform consciousness.
So it's not it's not just about repeating the words, but it's tapping into like a deeper, almost like an energetic vibration.
Exactly. And the Shri Matrika Bheda Tantra suggests that working with these mantras under the guidance of a guru can amplify their effects.
Oh, the guru, right. We keep coming back to the importance of that guru-disciple relationship in this text.
Right, it's a central theme. The text stresses that the guru's guidance is essential for navigating, all those complexities of spiritual practice and for ultimately achieving liberation.
It's interesting how this text just seems to weave together so many different things, right?
It does.
Like rituals, alchemy, mantras, the guru. And it seems that women play a significant role in these practices as well.
They do, and that's something that we'll explore in more detail in the next part of our deep dive.
I can't wait.
Me neither. Welcome back.
All right, so we're ready to jump into some pretty fascinating territory here.
Yeah.
The role of women in the Shri Matrika Bheda Tantra. And, this is where it gets really interesting to me, because you mentioned earlier that this text kind of views women differently than many other spiritual traditions.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The Shri Matrika Bheda Tantra definitely challenges conventional views of the feminine.
Right.
It doesn't shy away from those natural cycles of a woman's body, but it actually embraces them.
You mentioned, I think it was the 5th chapter, that it details how to prepare ashes using menstrual blood.
That's right.
Like, that's not something you hear every day.
It's definitely a practice that might raise some eyebrows today, but, within the context of the text, it's not meant to be like a literal instruction.
Right.
It's more about symbolism.
Symbolism. Okay, can you unpack that a little bit? What does that mean?
Yeah, so think about it, like menstrual blood, right?
Yeah.
It represents creation, life, and renewal.
Okay.
So by incorporating that into alchemical processes, what the Shri Matrika Bheda Tantra is doing is highlighting that potent creative energy that women embody.
So it's almost like reclaiming what's often seen as like taboo.
Right.
And transforming it into a source of power.
Exactly. The text is really challenging those patriarchal perspectives that often, kind of view menstruation as something to be hidden or ashamed of.
Right.
Instead, it's embracing the feminine as a really powerful force for spiritual transformation.
That's a very different way of looking at it.
Yeah.
And it kind of seems to connect with the whole idea of embracing all aspects of ourselves.
Yeah.
Right? Both light and shadow.
Exactly.
That we were talking about earlier.
The Shri Matrika Bheda Tantra is all about integrating all parts of ourselves on the path to liberation.
Right.
And that includes embracing the power of the feminine, and that goes for, both men and women.
This is really giving me a whole new perspective on this text.
Yeah.
That it's not just about, specific rituals or practices, but it's about a way of seeing the world, a way of seeing ourselves.
I think you said that perfectly. The Shri Matrika Bheda Tantra offers a way to understand reality that goes beyond our everyday perceptions.
Right, and we talked earlier about how the text points to like the interconnectedness of all things.
Exactly.
I think there was one passage that said, in reality, the Mahavidya is one with various names. So too the primeval God is one.
It's a really powerful statement, and it suggests that despite the apparent diversity in the world, there's this underlying unity connecting everything.
So even though we see these separate forms, and these separate experiences, ultimately it's all part of one divine source.
Exactly. And that source is, within each of us. And the Shri Matrika Bheda Tantra suggests that through practice, we can awaken to this interconnectedness and experience liberation.
But what does liberation actually mean in this context? Like, is it about escaping from reality or?
Not at all. It's about freedom, but not freedom in the sense of running away.
Okay.
It's about freedom from those limitations of our ego, our fears, our sense of separation from everything.
So it's about transforming our experience of reality, like from the inside out.
Precisely. Liberation, according to the Shri Matrika Bheda Tantra, is a state of consciousness that we can access here and now. It's about, living with this sense of joy, of interconnectedness, and recognizing that divine spark in all things.
That sounds pretty amazing.
Yeah.
But also, like, pretty challenging.
It is.
Especially when you consider that life throws all kinds of obstacles.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
In our way.
Life isn't always easy.
No.
But the Shri Matrika Bheda Tantra addresses that too.
Really, what does it say about overcoming challenges?
Well, it acknowledges that, poverty, illness, even what it calls planetary afflictions can kind of block our path.
Yep.
But it also emphasizes that we have the power to overcome those obstacles.
So it's not about, like, pretending that those things aren't there.
Right.
It's about finding ways to work with them.
Exactly. The text actually provides practices and rituals that are designed to help us deal with those difficulties.
Can you give us like an example?
Sure. Like there are specific mantras and rituals that are aimed at, alleviating poverty or for healing illness.
Okay.
The text also talks about, harmonizing our relationship with the planets, which were believed to influence our lives.
So it really seems like this text blends, like practical advice with spiritual insight.
It does. It's not just about, those lofty concepts.
Yeah.
The Shri Matrika Bheda Tantra offers down-to-earth tools for dealing with the ups and downs of life.
So this is all starting to really paint a really comprehensive picture for me.
Good.
Of what this text is all about.
Yeah.
But I am still curious about, like the specifics of some of those practices.
Yeah.
Especially those dealing with alchemy and ritual.
Well, that's a great place to pick up in the next part. We'll kind of delve into the, the how-tos, so to speak.
Right. Yeah.
And we'll explore how these practices connect back to that bigger picture that we've been discussing.
Okay, I'm ready. Okay, so we've talked about the philosophy, the worldview of the Shri Matrika Bheda Tantra.
Yeah.
Now I'm ready to kind of get into the nitty-gritty.
The how-to.
The practices.
Right.
So what can you tell us about the actual practices outlined in the text?
Well, we've touched on a few, like the use of mantras, creating a linga for worship.
Right, but I'm kind of itching for more detail. Like, what makes these practices unique?
Well, let's take the creation of the linga, for example.
Okay.
It's not just about, like, sculpting a physical object.
Yeah.
The Shri Matrika Bheda Tantra is incredibly specific about the materials used.
Like what?
Well, it recommends like a blend of clay, sandalwood paste, ash from sacred fires, even specific herbs known for their energetic properties.
Wow. So it's almost like an alchemical recipe.
Exactly.
In itself.
It is.
For the linga.
Yeah, and it doesn't just stop there.
Okay.
The text instructs you to actually chant specific mantras while you're shaping the linga. So you're imbuing it with spiritual energy.
It's fascinating how the text blends the physical and the spiritual.
It is.
In such a tangible way.
Yeah, and I think that's a key characteristic of the Shri Matrika Bheda Tantra.
Yeah.
It bridges that gap between the material and the spiritual, recognizing that interconnectedness.
And that actually reminds me of the alchemical processes that we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
Tell me more about those. What's the big idea behind the alchemical processes in this text?
Well, I think alchemy in the context of the Shri Matrika Bheda Tantra, it's about transformation on multiple levels.
Wow.
Yes, there's the aspect of, potentially transmuting base metals into gold.
Sure.
But the real magic, I think, happens within
that inner alchemy.
Exactly.
Turning our own limitations into something precious.
Exactly. The text describes preparing elixirs using mercury and sulfur. And these were believed to have very powerful effects on the body and the mind.
Okay.
Promoting healing, vitality, and even, expanded consciousness.
Now, working with mercury and sulfur, that sounds a little risky.
It can be, and the Shri Matrika Bheda Tantra emphasizes, approaching these things with caution.
Yeah.
It stresses that these practices should only be undertaken under the guidance of, a qualified guru.
Right.
And with a very deep understanding of the potential dangers.
So it's not something to be taken lightly?
No, not at all.
There's a real sense of responsibility in terms of how to practice?
Absolutely. The Shri Matrika Bheda Tantra acknowledges that power, but it also, emphasizes the importance of using them wisely and ethically.
And speaking of responsible practice, let's talk about those mantras again.
Okay.
Because the text seems to put a lot of emphasis on their use.
It does, yeah, because mantras are kind of like vibrational keys. That unlocks specific energies, within us and in the universe. And the Shri Matrika Bheda Tantra provides a whole array of these mantras for different purposes, from healing to protection to attracting abundance.
I remember that one that we talked about.
Oh, yeah.
With all the specific ingredients and chanting 108 times.
Yeah, very specific.
Very specific.
Yeah, and that level of detail, it's intentional.
Okay.
It points to the importance of precision and discipline in in mantra practice. It's not just about, casually repeating words. It's about aligning your intention, your voice, your energy with the specific vibration of that mantra.
And of course, working with a guru
Right.
is key.
The Shri Matrika Bheda Tantra stresses that.
Yeah, to unlock the true potential of these practices.
The guru's guidance is essential. They act as like a mentor, a teacher, a spiritual guide, and they help the disciple navigate all the complexities of the path.
It's interesting how that guru-disciple relationship really ties everything together.
It does, in this text. It does, yeah. The Shri Matrika Bheda Tantra is like a map for the spiritual journey, and the guru is that experienced guy who helps us, navigate that terrain.
This whole deep dive has been like exploring a hidden world.
Yeah.
A world filled with ancient wisdom and powerful practices.
No, I'm glad you feel that way. The Shri Matrika Bheda Tantra is a testament to the ingenuity and the depth of ancient Indian spiritual traditions. And, it offers this path to liberation that's both profound and practical.
And while, some of these practices might seem a little, far out to us today, I think the core principles really resonate.
They do.
The idea of inner alchemy, of transforming our limitations into something beautiful and powerful.
Yeah.
That's a message that speaks to me.
It speaks to a lot of people, even those who don't necessarily follow any specific spiritual tradition.
Right.
The Shri Matrika Bheda Tantra offers this way of seeing the world and ourselves that's really empowering and inspiring.
Well, this has been an incredible journey. I feel like we've only, just scratched the surface of what this text has to offer.
But hopefully this deep dive has, kind of sparked your curiosity and inspired you to learn more.
It definitely has. I'm already thinking about how some of these principles, could maybe apply to my own life. I might even try incorporating some of those mantras into my daily routine.
That's a great idea. Remember, the wisdom of these ancient texts is here for us to explore and apply in our own lives.
Well, thanks for joining us on this fascinating exploration of the Shri Matrika Bheda Tantra. It's been a real eye-opener.
The pleasure was all mine. May the wisdom of this ancient text continue to guide and inspire you on your journey.
And for our listener, if the Shri Matrika Bheda Tantra were to be kind of quote-unquote rediscovered in the modern world, how might its teachings be interpreted and applied in today's context? What would resonate and what would require careful consideration? Something to ponder, perhaps.
Indeed. Until next time, keep diving deep.